wonderful friend kick on there. And let's go ahead and get started. Oh, hey, Michael. Glad you could join us. All right, fantastic. So to kick us off, a couple of house rules. You should all be pretty familiar with these, but we like to keep mugs as a safe space for people to ask questions and talk about use cases. So this is a place where we ask that you not self-promote or pitch or contact group members outside of Mug without first communicating with them and asking their permission. Make sure that's okay. We appreciate everybody's cooperation on this. This is what helps make mugs so valuable for all of us, is the ability to be able to share freely. Now, as I mentioned, we are recording today's session. So for the folks who could not participate in person, we are going to be putting this content on YouTube. And then same for everybody that's here. If there's things after the fact that you want to go back and review, I'll be sending out an email as soon as we get this posted on the YouTube channel. That email will have the link so that you'll be able to go right to it. Now, if you are here, you probably signed up through the mugs.marketo.com page. But if you know anybody that is a Dynamics user, send them this way. We love having folks here. This is what makes this all so very special. We do have a couple of upcoming opportunities to bring to your attention. We have the Adobe Champions applications opening up here pretty soon. And so with that, there is going to be a session put on by the Marketo team, presented by Chiara Riga, one of our Marketo champions and leaders on the leadership team within the Champions program, who will be presenting on a few tips for a standout application, as well as a little bit more about the program. There is also an incredible webinar coming up next week on the power of the API. Highly recommend this group that will be presenting this. There were some presentations at Summit from this team, but if you are looking to dabble into the APIs or get a little more advanced, highly recommend this one. The Marketo team is also looking for feedback on some of the content that is in places like community or shared within the Marketo portal when you log in. So if you are interested in adding your thoughts to that, there are a couple of ways to participate, either with a survey or by scheduling an interview. So feel free to check those out. And of course, plug for all of our other users groups around the globe. Some of these are virtual, some are in person. Of course, with the virtual ones, it's a great opportunity to connect with other users around the globe and to be able to learn beyond just what's local to you. So those are always found on the mugs.marketo.com page. We've even got some of our international meetings coming up too. But always a great thing.
Melbourne.
Plug for the Melbourne team next week throughout here. So be sure to check those out. Now, the other thing I wanted to call attention to, the Marketo Dynamics users group, which you are all on here for today's call. We are always looking for incredible speakers, interesting use cases, or even folks who are currently consultants and looking to share some of their knowledge and their time to members. If this is of interest to you, please let me know. You know, finding great speakers is something that we love to do and be able to share this information. So happy to try to bring folks together as much as possible. Likewise, if anyone is interested in co-leading the group with me, please shoot me a note. Would love to have somebody else on board to help support this wonderful group of people. Speaking of wonderful people, for today, we are incredibly blessed to have three wonderful consultants from Down Under to share their experiences, the things that they have learned with many, many years working in Dynamics and Marketo, and bring to life some of these use cases throughout today's session. Stick around at the end too, because they're going to do some open Q&A for us at the end. They're brave. Bring your questions. But very excited to kick it off. I'm going to turn it over to V. Many of you probably know V from the Slack communities, the Dynamics channels, a very vocal voice in the community and one of our Melbourne leaders. V, take it away.
I'm okay. Just literally just trying to figure out my my technology here so I can share my slides. glad this is all very casual. Hopefully you can see that.
We've gotcha.
Yay. All right. So I have wrangled my good friends here, Dan and Helen, onto this because uh, in ANZ or APAC generally, what we tend to do is whenever there's dynamics questions, one of these three people tends to get pinged. So so we thought we would get together and have some fun with this. But all right, uh, go nuts, Helen.
Hello. Hey everyone, I'm Helen. I am the Director of Marketing Automation for APAC at a company called Blueprint X. Blueprint's a global consultancy focused on people, how they work, the technology they use, and how we can kind of empower customers to improve productivity and growth. As my title suggests, I work in the marketing automation practice, and I lead a really awesome team of consultants who provide various different strategic and tactical services across lots of different MarTech platforms. Myself, I have 8 years of experience in marketing automation, which means Marketo. And sort of prior to 2021, I worked in-house for a few different financial services organizations. And in my time at Blueprint, I have absolutely been branded the resident Microsoft Dynamics Sync expert. So I've worked with lots of different clients in various industries, financial services, professional services, not-for-profit, to sort of integrate Dynamics and Marketo for them and support them with that ongoing. So I've definitely seen some things. I've learned a lot. And I'm sure there's more to see and more to learn over the next few years. But yeah, really excited to kind of share some of my tips and knowledge with you guys. So let's
So
do it.
you guys are gonna have to keep look on the chat because I'm sharing. I can't actually see the chat. I don't think. But hi everybody. I'm Veronica, otherwise known as V. I've been around for a while. I think Marketo is about 18 years old, and I think I've been around for 17 of them. But I've done a lot of work across the world. One of my favorite memories was doing Dan's first Marketo certified consulting exam. he nailed it. Um, as my last slide says there, I've after being in the industry for a while, I'm now sort of spending a lot of time sort of trying to help other people coming up through the ranks, and mostly because I don't want people doing the same crap that I did. But I will pass over to Dan.
Hey guys, yep. So my name is Daniel. I'm actually based in New Zealand, so not an Australian. Woo.
The accent didn't give you
I
away at all.
excuse my accent. Yeah. I've been around Marketo for more than 11 years, so not quite as long as V, but I feel like I've been on the journey with Marketo. My business is Triggered Consulting, so I've had my business for almost over 8 years, just helping Marketo clients. I do a lot of setups of Marketo instances, getting the setup of Marketo right, getting the native integration. So I do a lot of work with Dynamics and Salesforce, actually more so with Dynamics. So I've become a bit of an expert in that. And I do a lot of fix-ups of Marketo. So when Marketo has gone off the rails, I help the client get it back on track. And I spend a large chunk of my time just helping my existing clients to scale Marketo, to learn it. I do a lot of custom work as well, a lot of custom integrations. So I'll share a bit of that today with you guys alongside the Dynamics integration. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to go through a little bit of dynamic sync tips and tricks up front. This is just stuff that Helen and I love to tell people when they're starting out. Dan's going to take the back half here and show you guys some amazing stuff that he has been up to, and we can't actually. We're just Helen and I are just going to be heckling at that point, and and we've got one last bit about our favorite things because we wanted everyone to know that not everybody in the world thinks that this thing sucks. Some of us actually enjoy using it. And then, as Brooke mentioned, we're going to do some open Q&A at the end, of which I am particularly frightened about and glad that I have some buddies with me to do that. But I think we should consider that like an open Q&A that anybody can answer, because I'm sure we've got a lot of very impressive resumes on the call today. But to kick it off, I'm going to throw to Helen.
Awesome, thanks. All right, so first kind of scenario or tip that we've got today is so duplicate records. So I mean, show of hands or send a thumbs up or something if you've ever had this scenario. So when a lead is converted to a contact in Dynamics, you end up with duplicates in Marketo, so one of each record. So it's something that I've seen many times, and as you can see, we've got a little Taylor Swift reference there on the diagram. So it's the conversion. Hi, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me. So usually when we see this as, that's a real statistic there, obviously, that there's a 99% chance that you're not using the out-of-the-box qualification process in Dynamics. So what's supposed to happen, as you may or may not know, is when you convert a lead in Dynamics into a contact, you're supposed to maintain one record in Marketo. So there's a field in Marketo called Microsoft Type. That should say either lead or contact, or it could be empty if it's not a synced record. And so what's supposed to happen is really that field just changes from lead to contact, and then Marketo's following the contact from that point onwards. So if you are ending up with duplicates, what's happening, I guess, is that there's no relationship there between the lead and the contact. So there could be different reasons for that, but mostly if you're not using the typical qualification process, Marketo is not seeing that it's the same record that you've converted. If you could jump to the next slide.
So I'm just gonna
Oh, yeah. Go for it.
add one when you're done. But yeah.
Okay, all good. So just a little screen grab there. So you might be familiar with that qualify button there in Dynamics. So that's typically what I see as being the out-of-the-box button. So hopefully a lot of you have really good relationships with your Dynamics admins. But sometimes I've had scenarios where people have said, no, it's Marketo. Marketo's broken. It's not Marketo. It's not CRM. We haven't changed anything. But if you want to kind of find out exactly what's happening, the Marketo logs are absolutely the place to go. So if you don't know, in Dynamics, there is a Marketo log and a Marketo error log. Someone have a question there, or just unmuted? No, all good. So yeah, that your Dynamics admin should be able to find that in Marketo. Basically, it's keeping a log of all of the changes that are happening, and everything that gets written to the log is what's syncing across to Marketo. So you have to specify a time period to look at that log. So would definitely recommend testing a conversion and then going to the log to look for that time period. But what you'll be looking for is the operation that's being written to that log. So what we are looking for is the create qualify lead operation. So if you're seeing a create for the creation of that contact, that's going to be causing a duplicate. If you see the create qualified lead, that's what Marketo needs to see to know that it's converting that lead into a contact and that it needs to update the existing record as opposed to create a new one. So in terms of what are your kind of options, you could revert back to using the out-of-the-box qualification button if you have done some customization in Dynamics. But there's a link there in that second option. So I'm guessing everyone will get a copy of this deck afterwards. But there is an option to use a custom Dynamics workflow to use that qualify lead operation. So it's officially not supported, I suppose, by Marketo, but someone on the community has sort of tested that out and seen that it did prevent the duplication of records in that scenario. V, did you want to add something from the?
Yeah, hilariously, if 99.9% of them are being caused by this, the other 0.1% is probably being caused by what I hit about 2 weeks ago, which is the if you're using the custom sync method, if you are converting the lead and you're not actually mapping the sync to Marketo field on conversion, but actually sort of using a workflow to update the contact as soon as the contact's created, you're screwed. That's not going to, it's not going to work. And it's kind of hilarious because it's only for like a split second that the record doesn't it doesn't have a sync to Marketo on it, but it's long enough for Marketo to lose it. So the so whenever I'm not looking for that qualification one, I'm looking for the, is there a moment in time ever where sync to Marketo is not ticked? If you're using the custom sync method, if there is, you're likely creating duplicates all over the place. So that's the other one that I've hit. The yeah.
And yeah, generally, mapping fields for conversion is very important if you're going to be converting leads into contacts for
Just a
Marketo.
little.
The next sort of tip that come across relatively recently. So there may be scenarios where you have to kind of clear out your database to reset the sync. That might more likely happen with a sandbox if you're needing to test something new. So a couple of example scenarios, you've completed your first sync from Dynamics, you've got the custom sync filter, but you've realized that, you've set that sync filter incorrectly and you need to revisit. Or maybe you've completed your initial sync, but, you paid for 100,000 records and you synced 500,000 and you've got to do something about that and start again with the custom sync filter. And the third one I was just thinking about yesterday, you might have just actually deleted a few records from Marketo accidentally. But when the sync is on, you're not actually seeing them automatically resync from Dynamics. So the reason that, if you do delete records or you wipe out the database to bring records back down again, they're not going to automatically start syncing with Marketo. You might see a few trickle through because if you're making changes to records in Dynamics, then that writes to the Marketo log. It's going to bring the record across to Marketo. But I've been in a situation where even asking support for help to resync and pull records back down after deletion hasn't actually done anything. So the easiest way that I've found to force that to happen is using that custom sync filter. So if you're not using the sync to Marketo checkbox, this probably won't help you. But that sync to Marketo checkbox in Dynamics, if you're wiping the database, disable the sync, clear out your sandbox, clear out your production, select all delete. It's a bit scary, but sometimes it's got to be done. And once you've kind of readied everything on the CRM side, you can re-enable the sync in Marketo and use that sync to Marketo checkbox to force a create in Marketo. So you could run a flow to set it to false and back to true for all of the records that you want to bring back down. Or, you can leave them all to false, enable the sync, and then set all the ones to true that you want to bring down from Dynamics. But that change and using that sync to Marketo field in Dynamics forces a create operation and make sure that all those records come across. So, making changes to records, contact records will bring a change down to Marketo, but I found that this is kind of just a really quick way to make it happen. You don't have to wait for support. You don't have to kind of figure out what fields you could and could not change without issues. So hopefully that is helpful to someone. If you did delete the record from Marketo and Dynamics, I can't help you, but.
All right. The number one thing that I have ever been asked about is multiple leads being kept in Microsoft Dynamics. So we're gonna hit this one in several ways today, and Dan's gonna hit it in a big way in his. But the difference between what Dan is talking about and what I'm talking about is these are the suggestions that I have for when you are the Marketo administrator, you have an unfriendly CRM team who might not necessarily want to help you and are just insisting that their way is the highway. So the if you've got a really helpful team, you can start to work on some of the stuff that Dan's going to show you. But the problem, Dynamics treating new leads like inquiries, and the same person can legitimately have multiple leads. That actually often messes with Marketo, because obviously Marketo treats leads as people. So the scenario that I have on the screen is based on it's basically based on two different scenarios actually. You've got your lead is created. They go to Marketo. The contact's created on lead conversion, so you already have a contact in your system. Then that original lead has a new inquiry. So through multiple methods, I know some people force that new inquiry at the Marketo end, and some people I prefer to enforce or to create that lead on the CRM side. But suddenly you have a contact and you have another lead, and you may have multiple leads. So I've seen people with like 6, 7 different leads in their system. This can also be a problem when you've got an existing contact and the sales rep comes in and creates a new lead. And that's what they're told to do, because that lead has a relationship to the primary contact, but it's not something that Marketo recognizes. It just sort of sees them as two different people, right? So so I know a lot of people have this one. So multiple leads, disqualified leads. So I'm about to say something that is considered relatively controversial. I don't think it's a bad thing to delete stuff. I really don't, especially if it's something that that you don't need. So you've got your sales qualification. So new person comes in, they go to Marketo, sales is qualifying that person at that point. So if they're qualified, they become a contact. Great, that comes back around, turns Marketo's flag to contact instead of lead, and suddenly you have a nice little healthy record there. But what if they disqualify them? So the second that they disqualify them, it's setting lead to deleted in Marketo. That's supposed to say deleted in CRM is true. So it sets lead to deleted in CRM is true, and suddenly you've got a lead floating around that you can't update anymore. So this new inquiry sort of comes in. So if your reporting happens to be in CRM, there should be absolutely no problems here if you just delete that person. Like I'm all for sort of pushing the reporting of this type of stuff sort of more into CRM, because that's where you get the most information. But using Marketo and keeping all of those unqualified or deleted leads just backs up the system, and it causes a problem if that person comes in again, because if there's a deleted or disqualified lead, then it can't push that update back up into CRM and requalify itself. So I'm actually always a fan of actually just deleting that person. So I sometimes whenever you say the word delete to some Marketo people, their brains sort of start to explode, but I don't mind saying it at all. The other one was the sales created lead, right? So I'm actually a fan of not even allowing these to come down into Marketo until they're qualified, because they're sales created. They're not something that marketing's created. They're not something that marketing necessarily needs to do much about. If you want to push those people into a nurture or something like that, you can push the original contact into a nurture, and you can use various methods we're going to talk about with the campaign shortly to find those leads and push them into a nurture, rather than just being a new lead being created. So I'm a big fan here of the disqualified. The disqualified lead should never make it into Marketo, but and when that new lead is created, you set your sync to Marketo as false on that new lead. I've already got the contact. That's the one I care about. So a lot of the stuff you'll see Dan and I talk about is really based around maintaining that person contact kind of relationship between the two in the native sync, and using the leads as inquiries, like trying to work with them as inquiries. So this one, I reckon, stays way above the line and just actually never makes it down into Marketo. So and I've argued that one with a lot of people, but it works well, not actually creating those ones. The third sort of scenario I kind of work with a lot is and again, you can see the person contact is sort of being managed here. A new person is created in Marketo, so that and that creates a new inquiry up into CRM. So you do have that relationship between the new lead. Once that person is created, there's sort of a temporary new lead in Marketo. So the and what I usually do is kind of ignore them while they're there. So I know which one is the contact, I know which one is the lead. So they kind of exist. So you can have it just sort of exist temporarily within Marketo. But again, once they're disqualified, that deleted in CRM is true. One of the cool things that we're going to talk about at the back end is our favorite things. One of the cool things is that CRM and Marketo in this instance will actually tell you that that lead has been deleted. And even if the sync to Marketo flag goes off, you'll still get a log item saying that that was changed to false. So you know when this person should be deleted, get rid of them. So you can kind of have that temporary duplicate that's just sort of sitting there. And if they get qualified, that temporary duplicate eventually gets merged back into your original person record anyway. So realistically, the whole goal here is to try to maintain, again, that contact person relationship and use that as the gold standard, like the gold relationship here, and just use that temporary duplicate as the inquiry record. This isn't a fun thing if you are up against your lead limits in Marketo. Obviously, keeping any kind of temporary or duplicate records in Marketo at that point is bad. And it also requires a really strong conversation with sales around the disposition of leads. You actually can't, in this methodology, have a whole bunch of unlooked at leads, and we know how difficult that can be to actually sort of get sales to do that work. But I've put in some really strict SLAs around this in the past and kind of gone, okay, cool, we're going to delete that. We're going to delete that record if you are obviously uninterested in it. So that can cause some really interesting conversations between Marketo and between marketing ops and sales. But but these are just sort of 3 ways you can kind of start to look at working with those duplicate leads in a little bit of a different way. Is this mine or yours? I think this is mine, Helen. The first one.
Yeah, first one's yours.
So jumping out to a slightly different topic, we all know that campaign sync can be fun in Marketo, mostly because it's only one way. So it's like if Marketo is pushing him up to CRM, great. That's awesome. We all kind of know how that works, but the sync doesn't support campaign sync from Dynamics. So we had a couple of different scenarios here that I'm going to do one and Helen's going to do one. So you're creating problem here is you're creating target audiences in CRM, and you need to add them to campaigns and as program members in Marketo. So what I tend to have is a centralized campaign trigger sitting inside Marketo, and recently I found out that it was quite legendary that I had like a program that had 172 ad choices in it in one flow. This was why I did it, because the centralized campaign trigger is basically just a long list of ad choices, and every time you need like a new program, a new campaign sync, you just need to add it to that trigger. And you're just pushing a new code into a custom field. It comes down to Marketo. The trigger goes, cool, campaign code is X. I'm going to add them to this program, and I'm going to at a specific status. And once they're added, you can manage them at the program level. So so I've set this up on sort of a small scale and a grand scale in the past, but it's very good for when you just want to, and that workflow to do this inside Dynamics is actually not that hard to build. So it's just all about, I need this group of people, they need this campaign code, and the second it comes down to Marketo, you've got a centralized trigger triggering off that data value change that's pushing them into the program that's needed. So I use this one a lot. It's sort of one of my favorite ones.
And so naming conventions, very important for these sorts of processes and how you define the codes of your campaigns. So just kind of off the back of that process, so something that's definitely come up for me a few times is not necessarily needing to add them to programs, although it would still be useful and you could use these in conjunction. But sometimes you might have a really complex segmentation. Maybe it's an ad hoc, just a one-off campaign or something that you only do once a year. And the logic that you have to use to generate your audience, or your, splitting out your database into several audiences, might be so complex that you just don't need or want hundreds of fields in Marketo, or maybe it's too complex to actually use the Marketo smart lists to build those audiences. So maybe, you have an analytics team that have to run this crazy query to actually define these segments of people. So you can use that custom field in Marketo in a different way. And this might be, you might be building your audience in CRM, or maybe it happens in a data warehouse, depending on where all of that data lives. But in the same way, you're kind of developing a campaign tag or code of some sort, passing that through into that custom field in Marketo. So that might be a workflow in Dynamics. It could be an API call if you've got, data sitting elsewhere. And then simply in Marketo, instead of having to build a crazy smart list just for this one-off campaign, your smart list is quite literally campaign code equals X, or contains X if you want to use it for kind of multiple segments or multiple campaigns. Just a note there, I guess, if you're wanting to use a string of different tags to say contains, that could get messy over time. So I would only, use that kind of ad hoc and clear the field once you've used it for that particular campaign. So yeah, I think that's maybe something that people have come across. You don't want to have to rely on a big list import just because you can't get the data in Marketo. So.
And most of the time, these work quite happily, as long as you're not adding people to multiple campaigns within that sync window, because that's when you run into trouble, because you're already overwriting that field by the time it's come down to Marketo. So yeah, space your campaigns out, kiddies, and don't have them have them all coming down. Have them all coming down at once. So before we jump into Dan, I know we've got a bunch of things in the chat. Jamie, I'm glad that you agree with me about deleting them all. I'm a big fan. I'm just checking to see if there's any sort of questions within the
I don't think so.
Yeah, everybody come on to the, like, if you're on Mops Pros and or Mo Pros, like either one, yeah, please jump onto the Dynamics channels. We're sort of always around to kind of answer questions. There's a lot of stuff about Slack groups. Awesome. Excellent. So it doesn't look like we've got any burning questions on there. So I will pass it over to Dan, the man. I'm sorry, that came out.
That's fine. That's good. I get it all the time.
I wish it hadn't, and it's been recorded now, so that sucks. I'm not a bad dad, like, seriously.
Thanks, V. Cool. So my part is around extending the native sync. So you've got the Dynamics native sync, and how can we extend it using what we call the hybrid sync. Okay, so I've been tossing up whether this is a term that I've invented or me and V invented or everybody uses, but I kind of like it because it helps you to sort of understand the difference between the native sync and like a custom sync. So it kind of uses a combination of the two. Okay, so we all know what the native sync is. So that's the out-of-box connector used to sync Marketo with Dynamics and Salesforce. So I really like the native sync. I generally recommend it for clients. It works nicely for certain use cases, but sometimes it can't do everything. And so this is where the custom part of the hybrid sync comes in. So a custom sync is obviously doing anything outside of the native connector. So using Marketo tools. So we've got webhooks at our disposal. We've got a great API that we can use. We've got now self-service flow steps, which I'm starting to see used a little bit. to do these integrations. And the goal here obviously is to create a super sync. So, you know, how can we achieve all the goals of the client using a combination of these two?
I swear I'm getting you a t-shirt with that. I'm getting you a t-shirt with that written on. It's like super sync. Damn.
So this approach allows us to benefit from all the great features of the native sync, but it allows us to do more, and some of that could include navigating around an overly customized or complex CRM architecture. So generally, Dynamics, you see that more customized, kind of complex architecture. Well, I do see it a lot. So we can use this approach to kind of navigate around that. And this is especially the case when we have multiple leads used. Okay, so these touched on multiple leads is when you have multiple lead records or inquiries, basically, within CRM. And Marketo is interested in people, so it doesn't really work to have six lead versions of the person syncing to Marketo. And we can also use this approach to achieve more than what the native sync can achieve. Okay, so we could create activity records into Dynamics using this approach. We can create cases, we can create leads, everything that, just the things that the Dynamics native sync can't achieve. So just a warning as well, you do need a Dynamics team that's willing to play ball because we're talking about custom integrations here. But we did, I was talking to V about it actually, and we tended to find that Dynamics admins and developers are actually really quite willing to play ball, we've found, so that's always a positive. So I've got 3 case studies for you guys today of existing client implementations where we've used this approach. So I'll take you through each of those case studies, the scenario, and then what we actually did to create the super sync. So case study 1 is,
every time he says that, I'm gonna go, woo.
The scenario for case study 1. So this client, they needed the ability to create what they called a prospect record into Dynamics when they receive an inquiry. So basically when they receive any web form inquiry from their website, and they actually needed this solution to go beyond just web forms. They wanted to be able to create this prospect record into Dynamics. Whenever they received any type of inquiry, they do a lot of third-party lead generation type stuff overseas. And so anytime they received an inquiry into Marketo, they needed to create this prospect record. So this prospect record in Dynamics is a custom entity, okay? So we can sync that custom entity through the native connector, but we needed the ability to create this prospect record from Marketo whenever we wanted to. And sadly, this client doesn't use the opportunity entity, so they've never used it. And so we couldn't we're not using the opportunity entity. And this Dynamics team doesn't use tasks. Okay, so we couldn't use the native task flow step to create that and just manage the inquiry that way. It's all done through the prospect record, and that's where the Dynamics sales team spends most of their time in this prospect record. So that was the scenario. The solution for this one, so what we did was we developed a webhook which allowed us to create the prospect record. So we're going directly using Marketo webhooks into Dynamics to create this record. So the payload within this webhook is quite substantial. It includes the source that the record came from. It includes all the inquiry details. It includes all the ad hoc comments from forms and questions from forms that needed to be followed up. It included product interest. So what is this inquiry interested in? What areas of the product, etc., etc. What levels of the product? Whether the prospect should be followed up or has requested follow-up, and also, most importantly, the contact keyword. So from the native sync, we have the contact record in the sync. So this client actually only uses contacts, they don't use leads. So we have that via the native sync, we have the contact in the sync, and so therefore we can pick up the contact keyword in the webhook payload, and that's how that gets matched up in Dynamics, okay? In terms of this, how we send this webhook, we send it through a centralized operational program in Marketo. So we have one program, one operational program that's running in Marketo that's doing all that's its only job is to send this webhook. So instead of, a lot of clients I think make the mistake when they do these types of processes in Marketo of calling the webhook in 50,000 different programs. Instead, we put it all in the one operational program, and then we can run processes like retrying the webhook if we see it failing. If we're trying to create a prospect record and for some reason the record's not in the sync, so it doesn't have a contact keyword, this allows us to sort of retry that webhook process. If it fails, we're able to send an alert out to the CRM team to say, hey, we tried to create this prospect record, but it failed. So that was case study one. So a really nice way to create to do that. On the final slide here is, and so this is an activity log of kind of the hybrid sync in motion. Okay, so you can see at 9:49 a.m. we call the webhook. So that's using the custom sync, so sending a webhook to Dynamics. And then 4 minutes later, so we receive back the prospect record. Okay, so that's the custom, that's the native custom entity sync in place. So we're kind of a nice check and balance. We're going, call the webhook. Did we get the prospect record back? Yes or no? So we kind of know that we've been successful, and we can do things. Excuse me, my voice is going a bit funny. We can do things like, hey, monitor this. So we can go, hey, we called the webhook, but we never received the prospect record, so something's gone wrong. So it's kind of another layer that we can use for monitoring. So yeah, that's case study one.
Just checking there's any questions on that one. Dan, have you ever tried Power Automate or Power Apps to create entities in Dynamics?
Yeah, that's what they're doing with us, I think. Yeah. I do have the next one that uses a lot of that. Yeah. The next case study. So case study two. This one steps up a little bit. So I'll go through the scenario. So this client has a Dynamics environment that uses multiple leads. So they have multiple lead records attached to the contact. Okay. The good news here, unlike these examples, is every person in Dynamics has a contact record. Okay. So this is their single customer view. So one person equals one contact with multiple leads. Okay, and this client is actually genuinely should be using multiple leads because their Marketo instance is set up for multi-brand. So they have 12 separate brands running out of the one Marketo instance. And each brand in CRM has its own sales team that follows up leads. Okay. Yep. So
pretty impressive. You've got them down to one contact record.
Yeah. Well, they didn't have a lot of crossover between their businesses. So, if one person, it was happening, but it was fairly unlikely that one person would inquire across multiple brands because it's just that type of business. And then all 12 brands web forms and inquiries into Marketo first. Okay. So we need the ability for Marketo to do a whole bunch of stuff. We needed the ability for Marketo to create a unique lead in Dynamics for every web form or inquiry that we receive per brand. We also needed to have the ability to update each live lead in Dynamics with an engagement score if it updated in Marketo to drive lead prioritization. So they wanted a way for Marketo to drive the prioritization of leads, of open leads. And we also needed to know what contact record has what open leads at any time in Marketo. Okay. So there's kind of two steps to this solution that I'll take you through. The first step is getting the native sync architecture set up correctly. Okay. So if you look at the visual underneath the purple line, you've got the Marketo person record, and above the line you've got the Dynamics either lead or contact record. Okay. So what we needed to do with the sync is we needed to firstly block all the leads coming to Marketo because we don't want 6 records in Marketo. of all their lead inquiries. So we needed to block that, and the way that we do that is we use the custom sync filter. We just basically turn it to false, and say ignore all leads. So every lead created in Dynamics is obviously matched to a contact record, and that's what we care about for the native sync. So we just have contact records in the sync bidirectionally. So if a lead comes into Dynamics, they'll have a contact created, and that will sync to Marketo. The lead will be blocked from Marketo. That's kind of the setup for the native sort of architecture, where we only care about contacts, and then add the hybrid sync elements. Okay, so what we did is we created what we called the worker app. Okay, so this is an application that sits in the client's Azure environment, and its job is to basically achieve everything that we needed it to achieve. Okay, so firstly, it receives webhooks from Marketo when we need to create a new lead into Dynamics. Okay, so web forms completed for brand X. We need to create this lead into Dynamics. We basically sync, first off, we sync the contact record for if it's a new person. So that happens immediately. And then we fire the webhook to the worker app to say, hey, can you create this lead for this brand? Or we also have a second webhook that we fire whenever the engagement score updates on the person's record and they have a live lead. We send that and say, update the relevant leads attached to this record because they're been doing more engagement. The worker app then passes these updates to Dynamics to create the lead or update the lead. Okay. We then also receive back from Dynamics whenever a lead is created there or updated, even our update. So actually passing. So we actually, from Marketo, we pass the updates to Dynamics, and then Dynamics passes them back. And the reason it does that is because number 4 here is that it passes the updates back to Marketo, and what it does is creates that lead into a Marketo custom object, which is attached to the person record. Okay, so that gives us in Marketo a view of all the live leads updated in pretty near real time. So that we can work out who has an open lead and what stage that got to, etc. So that is step 2 of the solution. Yeah, so it worked really nicely, that one.
In case study
so my
one,
final
case study 1, when you sync the prospect entity back to Marketo, do you tend to prefer the native connector to sync the entity, or do you use the API and a Marketo custom object?
That is the native sync that we use for that. So that that final view of the activity log, that is the native sync custom entity being synced. Yeah, so I do when it's available, I do recommend using the native connector. So if you go that one there, so that that activity at 9:53 is the native connector syncing that custom entity. So I do prefer the custom entity when it's available, because it's obviously easy. It's just clicking buttons. When you're doing a custom integration, you're actually having to do development and populate the custom objects. I'll talk about actually in my third case study custom objects. So we'll jump to that. So case study 3, so the scenario here is the client's Dynamics environment. Employees this client had a really complex non-standard architecture relationship between contacts and custom entities, which basically means that the native connector was not going to work. It's not going to be able to sync our custom entities, unfortunately. So the data held in custom entities was really critical to this client. So they needed to see all that custom entity data to be able to run their campaigns and journeys. Similar to case study 2, the contact record in Dynamics is the single customer view. So we had that in the bidirectional sync to the native sync. And then they also use the multiple leads approach to Dynamics architecture. So they have multiple lead records, but they have a single customer view, which is their contact record. Again, luckily, so we can do the, so the solution here, so part of the solution, similar to case study 2, We blocked all the leads coming to Marketo because we don't want them using the custom sync filter. So we just have the contact record in the sync. We also had other native stuff that did work. So opportunities entity worked. So that was kind of out of the box. So we can sync the opportunity entity for this client through the native connector, which is great. So the main sort of solution here for this one, in terms of the hybrid sync, is that we use a combination of Azure Power Apps and Marketo custom objects to create and update all the valuable entity data from Dynamics into Marketo. So because we can't use the native connector to get our custom entity data into Marketo, we had to use a whole bunch of custom objects. So Marketo custom objects. So to date, we've created 14 Marketo custom objects. Some of them include all their leads. So we get all their leads into a Marketo custom object, all their cases, and all their product data as well. So this solution worked really well in terms of having access to all that data that they needed. And all the Marketo custom objects are linked to the Dynamics contact record, which is your single customer view, which we get from the native sync. So we can see how we're using the hybrid sync approach to get do a combination of what data can we get from the native sync, and then what data can we get from our custom sync. So most of these custom objects are linked in a one-to-many relationship. But we did actually have a few that were in a many-to-many relationship. Okay, so I just thought I'd throw in here an example of how you can use custom objects in a many-to-many relationship. So for this example, it was about products. Okay, so what products does a customer own? So they have in between the contact record and the customer product, they had a customer product role. So what role does that customer play within the product relationship? So kind of a complex thing. I've sort of drawn it out at the bottom. Oops, too quick.
Sorry. Too quick.
Right. So I sort of drew it out at the bottom in terms of how we connect these relationships. So we have on the left, we have the person or the contact record, and within that we get the person or the contact GUID from the native sync with Dynamics. So that is linked. So then we have the bridge object, which is called customer product role. So this is the role that they play within the product. That's linked back to the contact record via the contact GUID. And then also that bridge object has the customer product GUID in it, which becomes the link field to the edge object, which is your customer product. So this allows us to have a filter like in Marketo that goes, who has a customer product with the customer product role of XYZ? And I'll show you a shot of that shortly. So yeah, Marketo custom objects, they're probably one of my favorite things in Marketo if the use case is right. So you can see we've got some triggers on the screen here. So we can see when anyone is added to a lead, and we can specify the sales stage and all the constraints that we've built into the custom object. We can also trigger within changes within the object. Okay, so for anyone that knows what uses the native custom entity sync, you'll know that you can't do this. Okay, so you can't trigger on sales stage changing to meet the customer. So it's kind of really a frustrating part of the native connector, but with Marketo custom objects, we can do that. We can trigger on any attribute changing within the object. And then we get, added to customer products. The product ID is MB, so we can use that, to start our customer journeys, and add it to case. So we get all this really rich data with Marketo custom objects that this client has. And then we go and we can combine these with the native sync triggers. So I mentioned earlier that opportunity works. The opportunity can sync through the native connector. So we've got these triggers as well. So we can see when they're added to the opportunity, and we can see also we can trigger on attribute changes within that with the native sync as well. So we can see when a sales stage changes to accepted on the opportunity. So via this combination of native sync custom sync, we can see, you know, the kind of full customer journey from lead to opportunity through to products, etc. And then we have these filters, obviously. So has lead, has customer products, and the second one there shows how the many-to-many object works. So has customer products, true, product ID is CQ and CTP, and they have the role of owner. So that's how the many-to-many object works with Marketo. So just another layer of data. And then another favorite part of having custom objects, Marketo custom objects in play on Marketo, is that you can actually visualize the data. Okay, so if you have the native custom entity syncing, you can't see that. We can see it in the activity log, but you can't visualize the latest version of the data. So we can go in, and so for this client, they have 10 custom objects. We can drop that select object down, and we can select any object that we have, and we can visualize all the object data for each record, which is a super good just thing to have. Yeah. So yeah, that's my 3 case studies.
I knew it. I knew it. Dan, you owe me some money. So we have a question. I thought there was a limit of 10 custom objects.
Depends. It depends on
So
who you
did
know
we.
at Adobe. It depends on who you know at Adobe if you can bust through
We're
that
here to
limit.
tell you on this recording at this time that is not a technical limit. It is, you can smash right through it.
Well, that's very good to know. You see that written down, that it's a hard limit, but you know that bigger clients can get the limits expanded. It's good to hear that you did it already.
Yeah.
So
cool.
we're gonna breeze through these. So we always hear about how the Dynamics sync is not as cool as the Salesforce sync. I think that they each have their benefits and quirks, but some of our favorite things about the first one is Dan's. This is creating the lead or the contact, because a lot of your stuff relies very much on creating the contact record.
Yeah, so this was my first one, my first favorite thing. And you know, Dynamics is always fairly it's just always got different architecture depending on what client you're using. It's not sort of a standard architecture. So the ability to be able to have the choice to create a lead or a contact in Dynamics is one of my favorite things, and to do that immediately. So this change happened, I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago. It used to be that when you create a new record, it has to go into the sync cycle, and it can take 5 minutes. But they changed that, and so they changed it about 4 years ago. Well, I may be wrong there, but to be able to create that record into Dynamics immediately, which is really good when you're doing like a custom integration as well on the side. I think the next one was mine too. So the flexibility to select the fields you want in the sync from Marketo. Okay, so in the admin part of Marketo, we can go in and select the field. We can choose the fields from Marketo that we want to have in the sync, that we want to have out of the sync. So we're not reliant like we are with the Salesforce sync. That that job has to be done by a Salesforce admin, which often.
And you can add one later, and as soon as you select it, it syncs all the existing records down. That does not happen in Salesforce. I can tell you that now.
Yeah, cool. So that one, and my next point was the hybrid sync approach that I've kind of been through today with some case studies. It actually does work really well. Generally, it's a little bit of custom build work to get it set up, but once it's running, it sort of hums along really nicely. And then the next one, the option to use the custom sync filter when needed to block records from the sync. As long as you understand how that custom sync filter works, it can be a really effective way of blocking records you don't want to have in the sync. Those were mine. I think the next one's.
Yeah, I think the next one is both mine and Helen's, because we both love it. When you're using the custom sync filter and you change sync to Marketo to false, it actually writes this to the activity log. It does not do that in the Salesforce sync. It just doesn't. You've got to come up with some very complicated, I call it the tag and flag method, which is like tell Marketo that it's going to switch off, and then it switches off, and then you can delete and all that sort of stuff. The dynamic sync is so much easier that way to deal with it. I'm going to leave the next one for Helen because I know this is her favorite thing.
Yeah, Marketo log, it's great. So yeah, it is in Dynamics. I would love it to be in Marketo, but it is in Dynamics, so you do need someone to access Dynamics to pull it out. But basically, yeah, any changes or creations that come through to Marketo have to be written to that log in Dynamics. So if it doesn't make it to the log, something's wrong. Either, Marketo is broken, hopefully not, or you've got some sort of weird and wonderful automation in Dynamics that isn't forcing a change that is getting written to that log. So it's the first thing that support ask for if you need help with something. It's a really great way to actually figure out exactly what's happening, and then you can identify pretty quickly whether the issue is in Dynamics or whether the issue is in Marketo. So if you haven't seen it before, go and have a look at it or get your Dynamics admin to export it.
And one of the things I'm always talking to clients about, because I have a lot of clients who sort of come to you and go, why would you bother? Why would you bother doing a hybrid sync rather than just going full custom sync? And I think I almost always go for the hybrid sync for a lot of the reasons that Dan's talking about, which is it has so many rich capabilities in it that I don't want to throw away. Like I don't want to throw away, and I don't want to have to rebuild it all. Like I don't want to have to rebuild merge contacts. I don't want to have to rebuild like opportunities into the sync, all that sort of stuff. I just want to add to it. So, and as a consultant, that this last one is huge. The I do how many, Helen, like when we were working together, we would do like 30, 40 of these a year. Like the validate sync setup, it's super useful. Like you can go in there and actually type in all of your details and just check to see if the CRM team have done what they were supposed to do properly before you hit the button. Like literally you can't do that with the Salesforce sync. Like you've got to kind of hope they're not lying to you, or you've got to go in and try to validate or ask them a lot of really stupid questions like, okay, if you're lying to me, this is a big deal. So if you haven't checked that, this is your chance to own up. Like I have so many of those conversations, whereas here you just go, yep, dude, you obviously didn't do that. So go back and do it. And once this is validated, we can talk. Like it's a huge deal.
And just on that, sometimes it happened to me once. You can get all green ticks in the validate setup, but it can still be wrong. So read that first line, the first line at the top of that window where you're validating this setup. Read it and make sure that says it's all good, you can sync. Because once I had all green ticks, but that line said something really weird was wrong. I think the ID and secret were just in the wrong fields, but it gave me all green. So just be aware of that one.
Sometimes it lies to you.
Sometimes.
All right. I do realize that we're sort of up against time, so if anyone sort of needs to go, you could drop out, sort of watch the Q&A and the recording. But I know Jamie needed to drop. I'm just going back through to see if there's any questions that we missed in the whole.
There's one from Charlie. Just what advice do we have for diagnosing sync error codes? For example, insert for person errors, 400 bad requests for individual people syncing to Dynamics.
That insert for person one, that's the one where you've got the duplicate, right?
I think so.
V, hi, how you doing?
Hey.
Not always.
Not always?
We get a lot of these sort of spurious sync errors with that error code with no obvious duplicate, no inactive record in Dynamics either. This will be the first time that lead would have been created in Dynamics. And normally it happens on adding to campaign.
I was going to say, do you have a merge process running? Because I've seen it where there's a lot of those, because for some reason there's an automated merge process in Dynamics. But there seems to be like a timing error. So it's trying to update a record that's already been merged, but the error comes through once and then never again for the same person. But I'm not so sure I've seen it with campaign.
So so what advice do you have for diagnosing? So you're not asking us to diagnose this error. You're asking us what our process is. So
because it was good. It was a good shout about the logs. That's one of the things we sort of I go to. but sometimes
The logs is
you
huge.
either
I
get
mean,
this-
obviously the log on the Marketo side and the log on the Dynamics side, they're sort of the go-tos. The sync error pane in the back end of in the admin, always check that to see if it's going to give me anything useful today. It hasn't so far, but you know, I can always hope. What I also do then is I start to get the CRM. Me personally, I start to get the CRM guy or girl or whoever it is who is on there, and start to work in tandem, because I find that these messages can almost never be solved just on one side or the other. It always seems to be a combination of behaviors that's going on that's doing this. I have hit that 400 bad requests for insert person into the marketing lists if it's the first time a marketing list is being created. So like it's the first time that you're sort of adding them to the and it can sometimes be a problem with Marketo's ability to create that list in the first place. So I have seen that as being a problem. So for my mind, when I'm analyzing the native sync, I'm always like, permissions first. Permissions and permissions and permissions. Does Marketo have permission to do the thing you want it to do? That's always the first thing I'm checking. Second thing is, are you hitting some kind of weird workflow in CRM? Because God knows there's a lot of them. Are you hitting some kind of weird workflow in CRM that Marketo doesn't understand, and that the sync doesn't kind of understand? Are you have you messed with some kind of out-of-the-box process? So is there an out-of-the-box process that is being messed with? Is campaign creation somehow different in your CRM instance than it is in any others, because it can be changed? The good news about the native sync, before I pass it on to the other guys, the good news about the native sync is I always keep it in my head that the native sync works the same way all the time. It has finite rules, and once you understand those rules, you can kind of just keep working through them to tick them off. And the 95% of native sync challenges for me are done just by ticking off those rules. Is it this? Is it this? Is it this? Is it this? And going very methodically through what you know about the native sync and what it actually does. And then you're left with that 5% who are like those little outliers where you have to start deep diving into logs and codes and stuff like that. But that is most definitely my process for working through. I don't know about you. I'll hand it to the other guys now.
Yeah, I think I agree. Permissions is always the first one. But yeah, as V said, just working with someone on the dynamic side and kind of comparing the information that you're getting in Marketo with what you can see on the dynamic side. So the error log in Marketo, it gives you the GUID of the record. So you can kind of do a bit of, follow the breadcrumbs, I like to call it, in terms of looking at the record in Marketo. Is there one in Dynamics? Has there been, a merge or a deletion, or as V said, a workflow that's happening that isn't getting written to that log? And yeah, understanding that the sync can only do so much if you've customized things on the dynamic side. So yeah, hopefully you have a good CRM person that can help you get through all of that, because it can be tricky if you don't have someone available to do that investigation. Anything to add, Dan?
No, you guys nailed it.
All right, so is there a list of changes? Hi, Megan. Is there a list of changes that will write an update to the Marketo log? Very specific use case, but notice that when Dynamics team updates contacts with the custom entity, not all the contacts are syncing. Curious if that type of change normally writes to the Marketo log. I'm going to throw that to our Marketo log expert.
I don't think I definitely don't have a list of what does and does not write to the log, unfortunately. But it's typically things that don't make its way there are things to do with custom workflows on the Dynamics side. But not being a Dynamics admin, it would be tricky for me to try and tell you all of those, what those exact things are. Usually if something's not syncing, I guess the first thing that I would look at is, are you using the custom sync filter, and is that ticked, and is that You know, do you have that filter on the custom entity, on the contact? And I guess using that log for the time period that a record was updated or created. And if you can see a create on the log for that contact and it's not in Marketo, then there's something really wrong with the Marketo sync and you need support. If it's not there, then it's looking, do you have some sort of workflow that is making that change in Dynamics, and what is it? And kind of, can we make some changes to that to force a change to the log? But no, I'm sorry, I don't have a list of things. I don't know if V or Dan have, you know, seen any specific things that have not made its way there, but yeah.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that you use the log to figure out which system the problem is in, right? I think that's so key. The if you can find no traces or whatever in the log, that means it didn't write properly. If you can find the traces in the log of any kind, or in this case, even if the log isn't showing you something, that means that the sync itself could be a problem. Like recently I had a whole bunch of changes that just wouldn't come down. And instead of spending 3 weeks trying to figure this out, I just went, you know what? It's not in the log. I'm going straight to Marketo support and making them convince me that it's not Marketo's problem. And you know what? It was an API. It was Dynamics suddenly putting in new request API limits, and the sync hadn't compensated for it, and engineering needed to put in some code to fix it. But it's like nobody could have troubleshooted that in any scenario. So the hard part is trying to figure out, is it a CRM problem? Is it a Marketo problem? And trying to go down that road first. And I think if it's not writing anything to the log, that is a real red flag for me that it's a Marketo problem, not a CRM, that it's a, sorry, other way around. If it's not writing anything to the log at all, then that tends to indicate a CRM problem, because Marketo can't even see it. Like, it can't pick up anything at all. So my first, looking at your question, my first thing would be, try to update the contact instead of just the entity, because it could be that some are coming down and not others, because the contact itself is updating. You can't just update a custom entity and hope that the changes will come down.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It was kind of about, the question's kind of around the wrong way. Like, normally you would have all your contacts in the sync, and then you would have the custom entities. So if the contact's not in the sync, then you're not going to see the custom entity in Marketo. So yeah.
And
so
just
kind of,
Shad's made a good comment in the chat that there are also trace logs in Dynamics that you can enable if you are not getting what you need from the Marketo error logs as well. So that's a good shout.
All right. So might take the last one. Hey, y'all from Texas. Hi, Texas. I know we talked about the campaign sync from Microsoft to Marketo. Any thoughts on diagnosing why records are not added to the Dynamics campaigns when linked to Marketo campaign at the program level? We're seeing issues where a third-party event platform adds records to the Marketo program based on their activity and attendance, but those records are not being added to the campaign one-to-one. Only about 15 to 20% of program members are being added. Any insights or thoughts of where to start our search? Do
you have a would you need a delay on syncing them to the campaign to make sure that that if they're a new record, that they have time to sync to Dynamics? That would be an obvious one, but
yeah, I mean, it is a problem. The campaign sync from Marketo to Dynamics is not as robust as the Salesforce one, and it doesn't do the thing that Salesforce does, which is just, if it's not like that, it will do like the implied sync thing. Like it's like if you try to add someone to a Salesforce campaign, it will sync the person first, and then it will do all of its requisite things, and then it will try to add it to a campaign. If you're doing it with Dynamics, you've got to try to make sure that you've synced the person first. And otherwise you
just
can
put a weight on the campaign flow step. Give it 5 minutes to make sure it's synced that contact. That would be where I would start looking.
Yeah, that'd be but otherwise, yeah, I'd be checking any failures or anything that you have in the logs. for sync to campaign, just to see if Dynamics is throwing back any things at you. It may not. My gut feel about this one, because it's happening to some and not others. Like if it was a campaign problem, it'd be happening to all. Like if it was permissions problem, it'd be happening to all. But sometimes a problem with syncing the underlying contact record will flow down to, and it will manifest itself with not being able to add it to the campaign. So I would honestly be spending, as long as you've checked all the other things we just talked about, I think I'd be focusing on what's stopping the contact from syncing properly, rather than spending too much time looking at campaign. But that's just kind of it's my gut feel on that one. Hope that's helpful at all. Cool. I think we're at the end of the questions. So Brooke, back to you.
Yeah, if we've got any other questions, last chance to get them in. You're also welcome to come off of mute. But otherwise, V, Dan, Helen, thank you so much for today's session. We really appreciate it, especially, taking the time, like I said, to do this Q&A and to walk through each of these use cases, how you've troubleshooted each of these different situations is so helpful for everyone to be able to take back. And we are absolutely grateful for that. As I mentioned, I will be putting this recording up on YouTube and sending out the email link as soon as it is ready. We thank you all for joining. As we all mentioned, please don't be strangers in the Slack channels, and we look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.